Am I on?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome NAILBA board member, Debbie Hannum.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tracey Edgar is Vice President of Sales Care Solutions for the companies of One America. She formerly led brokerage sales for the One America Care Solutions suite of asset-based long-term care products. In her current role, she leads Care Solutions sales and distribution across all distribution channels. An industry veteran, Edgar has been helping brokerage general agencies with strategic direction, planning, and marketing for more than 18 years. She is a national speaker on the topic, the long-term care crisis in America. Her professional history includes critical care nursing and 9 years of military service. Edgar is a registered nurse in the state of Michigan, has the certified LTC designation, and holds a life and health insurance license. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Grand Valley State University and has completed the Harvard Business School's Leadership for Senior Executives Certification Program. Please welcome to NAILBA 38, Tracey Edgar.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Thanks. Hey, how's everybody going? Everything's all right? Well, thanks for sticking around. I know we're getting here towards the end, and I wanted to come out and talk to you a little bit about long-term care planning and why that's important. And it's very important to me. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just tell you a little story, and hopefully that you'll see why I really want it to be important for you as well. So, my grandfather, he was a hardworking guy. He worked 30 years at General Motors, and he retired with a modest nest egg. And about 3 years into his retirement was when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So my grandmother took care of him for 3 years until she just couldn't do it anymore. And then we had to make the really heart-wrenching decision for nursing home placement for him. Now, during that period of time, my mother wasn't providing any care for him, but my grandfather passed, and for 10 years, my grandmother ended up living with my mom and dad. And it wasn't because at the time my grandmother was needing any care. She didn't need it till the very end. But what happened was she was just financially unable to live independently anymore because of the devastation to the financially that my grandfather's illness caused to her. So at the tail end of my grandmother's life, she started needing a little bit of care, and my mom did end up providing the care for her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And during that period of time was when my oldest daughter was born. So what is it that mamas want to do when their babies have babies? Right? Come help out, come cook some meals, come stay and help with the new baby. But my mom couldn't come, because who's going to take care of grandma while she takes this little trip to come and see me and my new baby? So what I'm trying to talk to you about right now is I'm trying to talk to you about 4 generations of people who were impacted by one person's lack of planning. So when I got into the long-term care space, people wonder why I came from nursing into this space, but that's why. It's an opportunity to have an impact. All of you in the audience here have an opportunity to make an impact, whether it's through the advisors that are in your brokerage general agencies or IMO, or whether it's you yourself talking to your clients. You have an opportunity to make an impact and to never allow that to happen to a family again. So I'm very passionate about my business. And I wanted to bring a couple of people who have had really good experiences with bringing long-term care insurance into their business. Because let me just tell you this. Long-term care insurance is not designed to replace families, nor is long-term care insurance designed to replace what you're already doing. It's designed to bring something extra to you, an added income, an added benefit or feature that you can offer your customers, offer your producers, without replacing anything that you're already doing and just adding some additional income stream. So hopefully that all sounds good to you. So now to help me do that, I'm going to introduce a couple of panelists who are going to come out and assist me in talking to you about how they've done it in their business. So first I want to introduce to you Bert Snover. Bert is the leader of CompEdge. It's a brokerage company located in Rockwall County, Texas. He leads the carrier relations and the field training functions. He and his staff of 9 have trained hundreds of advisors on the subtleties of annuities and insurance, drawing on his nearly 40 years of experience in this industry. He's a graduate of the University of Michigan. Bert resides in Dallas, Texas with his wife, Colleen. Will you join me in welcoming Bert to the stage? Thank you, Bert. Thanks for being here. Our next panelist is Jeff Reed. Jeff is the Chief Communications Officer for Advantage Insurance Network, AIN, and Jeff is responsible for the development and execution of communication, education, and training strategies across the nationwide network of independent marketing organizations and brokerage agencies in the life insurance and annuity industry. Prior to joining AIN, Jeff is the head of communications as the head of communications in 2012. He served as marketing consultant for Cavalier Associates, working with a nationwide group of high-end insurance-focused advisors. Previously, he served in a similar role with a life brokerage agency in Southern California after his time as a career life insurance producer with MassMutual, which please help me join me in welcoming Jeff Reed to the stage. Jeff, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. And last but not least, I think probably a lot of you in the audience already know Ken Hurley. He's a regional sales director for One America. Ken works with IMOs and BGAs to grow One America's Care Solutions product line. He provides training to IMO and BGA leadership, back offices, and producers to support and drive the growth of care solutions within the brokerage channel. This guy's been in the business for 30 years. He really knows what he's talking about, both traditional and asset-based long-term care planning. He's trained thousands of producers, financial advisors, and other financial services professionals from coast to coast. Please welcome Ken Hurley. Ken, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. So, you know, all three of you have been very successful in the long-term care insurance marketplace, and what I wanted to do is share a little bit with our audience about some of the successes and how you've accomplished what you've been able to accomplish over the years. So, Jeff, I'll start off with you if that's okay.
Sure.
At what point did AIN decide to enter the long-term care market, and why did you make that decision?
Yeah, great question. We've been in the care planning business for about 10 years in round numbers, and really started to make more investments in it in called the 2012, 2013 timeframe, primarily because of how challenging it was becoming to kind of predict what was going to go on from a regulatory standpoint, tax standpoint, and the life side of the business. It was just becoming more and more challenging to grow that segment. So not a big intuitive leap to think that diversification was a strategy to combat that, as we wanted to help our agencies grow. So as we fast forward from there and look at the other things that played into that decision, why we've continued to invest over the years, it's things like the waning of the traditional long-term care market. It's things like the baby boomers getting older, caring for their parents in the face, the thought process of what do we do when we find ourselves in that situation later in life. And then also the agent community. If we're looking at pressure on our income, downward pressure on our income and revenue at the agency level, our advisors that we work with are staring the exact same phenomenon straight in the face. So we thought that there would be a willing audience at that advisor level as well to be open to a wholesaling or selling a product that they hadn't dealt with historically as a way to recover some of that lost income from selling less life insurance. When you put it all together, I think that leads to where we are today, which is 3-4 years of double-digit growth year over year. Certainly didn't happen overnight. There were a lot of, well, we'll call them speed bumps, hurdles, whatever you want, along the way as we learned the right way to communicate with the advisor community about these solutions and ultimately equip them to have that conversation with their clients.
Yeah, okay, well, great. Thank you very much. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the specific strategies that you used for that growth. I mean, that's an impressive growth. And speaking of growth, I mean, Bert, you've been on a crazy trajectory for growth over the last couple of years. And I know, some of it was just using the resources that you have, but I'm kind of curious about why you decided to ramp up your long-term care business.
Well, primarily it was to fill a gap. I was in the long-term care business and actually got out of it and didn't do any distribution for probably the last 15 years. But with the advent of, we're primarily a life insurance shop with a fair mix of annuities as well. And these accelerated benefit riders are great for life insurance. And we have these confinement doublers that are available on annuities, et cetera. And I noticed a trend of advisors selling these products as if you could spend the money twice. In other words, you sell a life insurance product with an ABR rider, chronic illness, terrific benefit. We've had people with claims, but it does bring the death benefit down. And so they'll say, well, I'll just sell more life insurance, so let's dump more money in the annuity. And I realize we're just setting our agents up to fail by doing that. So we started looking for solutions, and yours fits the bill perfectly. So that's how we decided to get back in. So after about a 12-year absence from the long-term care market, we started with you a few years ago, and it's been going really well.
Well, welcome back, and we're really happy that you chose One America to partner with to help fill that gap. So we really appreciate that. You know, Ken, you've had an extensive career in the long-term care space, and you've worked with both linked benefit products as well as just traditional long-term care or medical, based long-term care insurance. So when you think about that, when you think about both of those products, what would you say is, some considerations for looking at one type of product versus another?
Yeah, I think when you look at traditional long-term care, it's cost. It's going to be a less expensive product, generally speaking. It's more of a term type approach for long-term care solution. When we look at an asset-based product, it's going to have more flexibility in the ways that you can pay for the product. It's not just an annual pay for life. There's single pays, 5, 10, numerous different ways you can pay. The other thing that clients really want today in many cases on looking at asset-based products versus traditional, they want the product to be able to do something else. They want to make sure they get something for their money that they've spent, where they understand if they go with traditional, it's like a term policy or like their car insurance. They're going to pay, and every year they pay a premium, they'll have coverage. But if they don't file a claim, just like if we don't crash into a telephone pole, we're not going to get anything from our car insurance. With an asset-based product, if they don't use it, there's a death benefit, or if they decide at some point they want to quit, there's cash surrender value. So it's just a different approach, and without question, lower cost using a traditional plan. And then the other thing that we also see with a traditional plan, you have the national partnership, which a lot of companies, their products qualify for national partnership, which means they can buy a lower cost product and have minimal coverage, and if it runs out, they still have some protection against spending down their life savings. It might not protect everything they have, but it gives them some protection.
Right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, and it's sort of the old adage, right? Nobody ever says, I sure wish my house would have burned down so I could use that insurance, right?
Exactly.
Most people would rather have not had the event, but if it does burn down, they're darn happy that they have it, right? Look at me swearing up here, darn. Okay, Bert, back to you. Let's talk a little bit about, your business with long-term care. Do you do much in the traditional long-term care space, or what's your split of business between traditional long-term care insurance and linked benefits, and then what's the differences between one versus the other for you?
Well, it's really easy. 0 traditional, 100% One America. When I said I got out of the business of the long-term care, I actually started in the property and casualty world as an underwriter and eventually started working in the commercial side. And they would do something called remarketing every year, which just meant going out and getting quotes from all the carriers. And when I started doing brokerage business, I decided I wasn't going to distribute anything that would have rate increases. So I did a lot of long-term care early on. And when they stopped becoming non-cancelable policies, I just quit. So we've never distributed a product that's had a rate increase, and I just won't do it. So with yours and the premium set up the way it is and the way the product works, I'm ready to jump back in. So it's 0 traditional and 100% asset-based.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I know, my former company, I spent a lot of years there, right, saying, well, we've never raised rates, and I don't think we're going to raise rates either, but we've done it, right? That company's done it and has done it now multiple times, so it's good that you were able to build that insulation in your organization. Jeff, your organization leans, I think, more towards linked benefit solutions as well. What are some of the factors that have contributed to that for AIN?
Yeah, we're right there with the 0 for the traditional.
Right.
And for us, it's grounded in a couple of things that you actually talked about, Ken. It's the consumer value that this product line presents. There's the guarantees, so that you don't have to have that difficult conversation with the client later on. There's the flexibility that you're going to get value out of this contract at some point, regardless of what the outcome is. The other piece of it as we were studying this really early on, is the process. If we know that the future is to work with advisors beyond the traditional life specialist, and we want to get more into that FA community, our processes need to be closer to the ticket process that investment advisor uses when they're working with their clients. And a lot of the application processes that we see in this segment are either already trending in that direction, or there's an internal dialogue at the carrier about heading further into that direction. So we think, as we position ourselves for the future, that's a big piece of it. The other is viewing this as a larger conversation than just the funding mechanism to pay for care. And I don't think that we do a good enough job, a credible enough job as an industry, really talking about the care planning process, how important it is to integrate with the overall retirement plan, the estate plan, the legacy plan, whatever else is going on for that particular client, and then also have a plan for accessing the care when the time arrives. Right. The money, that's almost the easy part, particularly if you've bought one of these products, but actually which facility, do I want to stay at home, what role do I want my family to play, all of those things. I'd certainly rather make those kinds of decisions to the degree you can, because life sometimes throws you a curve, but to the degree you can, make that decision ahead of time. Yeah. Have a roadmap to follow, just like you would for any other health kind of emergency. And the resources that the carriers have, One America included, obviously, around that, I just don't think we use them as effectively as we could from a storytelling perspective to get the advisor involved in that planning part of the process, not just the product solution, and certainly then giving the client the peace of mind that they have something more valuable than just a funding mechanism for care.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I saw it all the time in the emergency department. We would see people who would come in on a stretcher, right? Something has just happened to them that they're not expecting. I mean, what is the nature of the emergency department? They would see 350 people a day in the emergency department. How many of them do you think were planning to be there? Right? None of them were. So here the person is on the stretcher, and all the family and the social workers and they're all trying to figure out what the next steps are for this person. And really, just to your point, how much smarter it is to have that plan already laid out when you're healthy, because when the tornado is hitting, that's not the time to start thinking about what we're going to do in case of a tornado, right?
I've actually, funny story, the most frightened I've ever been was the first time I was in a tornado watch. I'm from California, and I have no idea what to do. I'm on the top floor of a townhome, like, do I go knock on my downstairs neighbor's door and climb in their bathtub? What do I do? I don't want that process when I have to make decisions about how I'm cared for.
Exactly. Well, speaking of making decisions, Jeff, I'll stick with you just for a minute if you don't mind. Sure. With AIN having the sustained growth that they've had, so it's, we saw a sharp ramp up of the amount of growth that you had, and you've been able to sustain it over the years. I would expect that took some amount of resources and some focus on that. Could you talk a little bit about what AIN has done to sort of build that product line up and then keep it at that level for as long as you have?
Sure. Human capital would be the first piece. Without having dedicated specialists at the IMO level, not let alone the agency level, we'll get there in a minute, but at the IMO level, we have multiple individuals who wake up every day and do nothing but think about how to help our agencies market asset-based long-term care more effectively, how to coach those advisors to have the conversation that maybe they're not so comfortable with as they're learning the segment. So that part is absolutely essential. You can't do anything without it. Mm-hmm. In terms of how they go about that job, it's very focused on training and education. You've seen this very closely, obviously, in your work with us. And that takes a couple of different forms. It all starts with a heavy dose of analysis, whether that's product pricing or the feature set or what have you that you're looking at when you look at the breadth of product that's now available in the segment. Distilling that down to really actionable and digestible sales ideas that the advisor is going to be really willing to talk about, whether that's making that initial conversation or in response to a larger planning conversation that they're having with their client, depending on the type of advisor you're working with. And we deliver those in a very specific way. It's almost an event cascade. Large-scale events that all of our agencies have access to. We'll do 50 of those a year, not all focused on asset-based long-term care, obviously. But those are great for getting the word out to a large audience, but it doesn't have the intimacy that allows the questions and really getting into the nitty-gritty detail. So we'll then do smaller scale virtual events, often in concert with that agency who invites their advisors. So we're actually working directly, communicating directly with the advisor on the agency's behalf. And then a lot of one-to-one coaching sessions that really take that specialist in the office that we hope they've invested in and make them the expert that they really need to be in order to do this job credibly. And then there are a whole bunch of resources that we develop and curate that support that whole process, all of that training and education that we do. And while there are a couple of individuals who are solely focused on asset-based long-term care, when we talk about the strategic direction, the execution of all that, the group involved encompasses, I'm not going to say everybody on the team, but pretty darn close. It's a significant and important business for us.
Yeah, and I've seen that specialist model work in other organizations as well. Just having somebody who's really focused on that is very important. You know, Ken, from a producer perspective, what's something that you would want to share, that you think that these folks could share with a financial professional, just for them to have the best chance of long-term care, you know, production and success in their business?
Yeah, the first and most important thing is have the conversation.
Right.
If you're not talking to your client, somebody else is. So about 10 years ago, there was some market research done, and the market research was to people that had bought some form of long-term care, whether it was traditional or asset-based. And what they found was about 87% of the people that bought some type of product, they actually initiated the phone call or the email to their financial planner or insurance professional. And quite frankly, that's embarrassing to our industry. We shouldn't have to wait for the client to come to us. We should be talking to them, and we're not. So it's having a conversation. Right now is the perfect time to have a conversation. Thanksgiving, single biggest time that we see new claims filed is right after Thanksgiving. Why is that? What do we all do at Thanksgiving? We get on airplanes, we get in the car, we go travel long distances to see the grandparents, the in-laws, whoever we're going to visit. And we get there and we find out, oh, grandma's not in such good shape. Grandma's leaving the stove on. Grandma hasn't maybe taken the best care of her hygiene lately, and she's leaving bad food in the fridge. And all of a sudden, that Monday following Thanksgiving, we're calling to file claims. So talk to your family. It's time to, this is a family issue, and it's all about planning. So if you do one thing and only one thing, it's have a conversation with your clients. The more you bring up this conversation, the more sales you'll see. Because if you're not talking to your client and your agents aren't talking to your clients, they're going out on the internet and they're Googling long-term care. And they're finding somebody else that can sell them that product, and you're just walking away from that sale. So it's having that conversation. It's not that scary. You don't have to be an expert. We have other experts, the carriers, the back offices. They can help the producers with that sale.
Right. And it's not just having any conversation, right? I think one of the things I've seen, you know, I've been in this business for 20 years, long-term care specifically, and one of the things I see is, you know, advisors who walk in with a shiny brochure and an illustration and start talking about all the financial impacts of a long-term care problem. And that is a conversation, and you might even get some sales that way. But really, when you can start telling them about the impact to their family, physically, financially, right. Emotionally, absolutely. You know, just another ER story real quick is, you know, we had a call down in the ER, and they said there's this 35-year-old woman who had basically collapsed on what was called 7 North. It's like the neurologic floor. So we didn't know what was going on, but they said, we're coming down to the ER with this woman, and we worked on her for probably an hour and a half, and she ended up passing away, which left us all really scratching our heads because all of her drug screens and everything were negative. It's not usual for a 35-year-old to just suddenly drop like that. So what we ended up finding out about her is that she's 35, but for 10 years, she had been the sole care provider of her mother, who had had a massive stroke. And you know, it's just sort of, Harley Gordon has said in the past that taking care of a chronically ill person will make a healthy person chronically ill. Yeah. And we saw that. Just and in this lady's case, I mean, it took her right to the end. So long-term care planning is really important. Bert, what would you say to an agency owner who'd like to really get a fast start in the long-term care space? What do you think is the fastest way for somebody to get started in this space?
Well, I think it is just opening up the conversations, looking for gaps in coverage like we discovered with the ABRs and the confinement doublers and so forth. And a lot of it is educating the agents. So instead of just sending out quotes, you know, we're in about 42 states a year doing face-to-face training with advisors.
Yeah.
And we'll send them the quote, the illustration, and they'll get through it and they think they understand it. And then we always ask, okay, how are you going to open the conversation? Sell it to me, you know? And they're like, well, I'm not comfortable. So a lot of our initial sales training is actually on the phone with the advisor and the client sitting together asking us the questions, and eventually they get it. So if you're an agency that has several advisors out there, get somebody trained up really well to help and perpetuate the training and the education, and hopefully you're getting that support from your organizations and uplines. But education is a key in developing a sales talk and getting people comfortable with objections and things like that. I hear people handling objections that don't even come up and chasing off sales. So I think it's really important just to coach in the sales process.
A little overselling, right?
And once they get confident in how to talk about it and just ask very simple questions, the conversation, the sales occur, and that's what we've been doing on a lot of training. Like I said, we were in 42 states last year talking about One America. So
yeah, I mean, even just a lot of the people in this audience, for example, are really with they're really a lot of life insurance type producers and organizations, and one of the things is about the conversation, to your point, and about the training, to your point, or them being able to ask the right questions, right? Is just if somebody's calling in for a life insurance quote, to ask, has the client done long-term care planning? Do they need to do long-term care planning as well as the life insurance planning, or do they truly just need the life insurance? And that'll at least give them more people to talk to, right? So would you say, we have just a couple of minutes left, is there any last minute tidbits that you would want to offer up? I'll start with you, Ken. Is there any last minute advice that you would give to this audience about long-term care planning, or whatever topic you'd want it to lean to?
Yeah, I think for going out to agents that haven't been actively in the long-term care marketplace, they often say, well, I need leads. Who do I go to? Well, they have plenty of leads in their own book of business. And what I would suggest is a very short letter, and I've done this with many agencies, and it works. It's 3 or 4 sentences. All the letter says is, Dear Tracy, many of my clients have been inquiring about long-term care planning. This is something I too specialize in. If you'd like to have a conversation, give me a call. And it works. They start calling because we know there's clients out there looking for some type of long-term care plan. They don't know where to turn to. Maybe they've already started to do their Google search. But if all of a sudden they get a letter from their friendly life insurance agent, the agent they've bought annuities from, whatever products they've bought from you in the past, they'd rather go to you for that help and advice than a stranger over the computer. So it's a great way to just open up an easy conversation, very simple letter. The last thing I would say with the letter, don't email it. Handwrite it, put a stamp on it, put it in the mail. It'll get opened. If you have horrible handwriting like I do, hire your daughter or a kid from the high school or the local church or synagogue. Pay them $10 an hour to handwrite the letters. They'll get opened, and it will work.
That's great. That's a great piece of advice. How about just moving on down the line to you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think the message for me would be, as wonderful as our relationship with One America is, they're the dominant product in our network. This product segment is expanding, and there's so many nuances to all the products now that you really have to become expert, not only in the ones that you represent, but all of the products that are in the segment, so that you can be a credible voice with that advisor who is probably hearing from other people about those competing products. The other is that the barriers to entry from the client's perspective into this type of product have changed dramatically. One America's had an extended premium duration available for years that probably isn't sold as much as it could or should be, particularly to that younger client. And we're seeing more carriers start to expand that as well as they try and get to that younger client and grow this segment. The other is the human capital piece. I mentioned that we've obviously invested in it. The agencies that are really succeeding are the ones that have also made that human capital investment, and not just okay, we're going to put the new person on AssetBased. We're going to make this life person responsible for it, and they would rather go sell life insurance, whatever the case may be. True specialist, real goals, top-down buy-in, and push to grow the segment.
Yeah, that's excellent. How about for you, Bert? Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, Jeff touched on it. What I've found to be the biggest thing is a lot of advisors will already have a preconceived notion of who their prospect is because they were selling long-term care from all the well-known companies from 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
And our average client, if you look through our base, is about 52. So there's no better prospect than someone
52, that's interesting. Do y'all find that interesting?
That's young.
52. It was 78 when I first started in the business in 1999. It was the average age of the buyer was 78. That's
exactly.
a big difference, right?
That's everybody was 70 and above or 65, and they were thinking about it. It wasn't long-term care; it was nursing home coverage, right?
Right.
And so the main thing is to reset the opportunity in the mind of the advisor to realize that the best candidate for a long-term care type of a product is someone who just took care of their dad or mom for 10 years,
right.
And they're ready and they don't want to go through that again. So we have a lot of sales in the low 50s, which really I'm really surprised at, but I would say that's a good place to
start. So don't count them out just because you think they might be like too young. I think long-term care is everybody's problem. It's not just an old person's problem, and it doesn't take long working in the emergency department to see that. I've taken care of a 20-year-old kid who fell out of his deer stand and broke his neck. I mean, he's never going to be independent again. I've taken care of a 35-year-old with full-blown Alzheimer's disease. So don't count out your younger clients. I think that's a great point that you made. So thank you all very much for being on this panel. I really appreciate it. I know it took a little preparation and it takes some time out of your day, and I just really wanted to thank you for being here with me today. And thanks to all of you for paying attention and for being here for this panel. So thank you very much.